Chapter 1. Stop reacting. Start responding. The tyranny of the immediate. We live in the era of the instant. We have instant messaging, instant news, and instant gratification. Because our world moves at the speed of light, we have subconsciously trained our brains to believe that the faster we move, the more effective we are. We feel a sense of urgency in every email notification, every social media comment, and every unexpected question from a colleague. But there is a high price for this speed. We have lost the art of the response and replaced it with the reflex of the reaction. To react is to be a slave. When you react, you are giving away your power to whatever stimulus just occurred. If someone yells at you and you yell back, they are the ones in control of your vocal cords. If a stock market dip causes you to sell in a panic, the market is in control of your bank account. If a snide remark from a family member ruins your entire afternoon, they are the ones in control of your happiness. Most people spend 90% of their lives in reaction mode. They are like pinballs, bouncing off the obstacles of life, dictated by the force of the hit rather than the direction of their own will. This chapter is about ending that cycle. It is about building a fortress between what happens to you and what you do next. The biology of the hijack. To stop reacting, you must first understand why you do it. Millions of years ago, reaction was a survival mechanism. If a saber-toothed tiger jumped out of the brush, you didn't need a deliberate response. You didn't need to weigh your options or consider your long-term goals. You needed your amygdala, the almond-shaped part of your brain responsible for the fight-or-flight response, to take total control. In those moments, the amygdala shuts down the prefrontal cortex, the logical, thinking part of your brain. It floods your body with cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate spikes, your vision narrows, and your muscles tense. You are primed for violence or escape. The problem is that in the modern world, your amygdala cannot tell the difference between a saber-toothed tiger and a critical performance review. It cannot distinguish between a life-threatening predator and a person cutting you off in traffic. Your body undergoes a limbic hijack over minor inconveniences. When you are hijacked, you are literally incapable of thinking clearly. This is why you say things during an argument that you later regret. This is why you make impulsive purchases when you're stressed. Your thinking brain was offline. Reaction versus response. The critical difference. What is the difference between an impulsive reaction and a deliberate response? A reaction is defensive. It is about protecting the ego. It is quick, hot, and often messy. It focuses on the immediate hit of relief. When you snap back at a critic, it feels good for exactly 2 seconds because you've defended yourself. But then the fallout begins. A response is strategic. It is about the outcome. A response asks, what do I want to achieve here? If your goal is to maintain a professional relationship, your response to criticism will look very different from your reaction to it. A response is cool, measured, and purposeful. Consider a workplace conflict. The reaction. Your boss blames you for a mistake that was actually a teammate's fault. You immediately get flushed, interrupt them, and defensively explain why you're innocent, perhaps throwing your teammate under the bus in the process. You look unstable, untrustworthy, and petty. The response. You feel the heat of anger. You recognize it. You wait. You listen to the end of the critique. You take a breath. You say, I hear your concerns about the project timeline. Let me gather the data on where the bottleneck occurred, and I'll get back to you in an hour with a solution. You look like a leader. You look like the person in charge. The core mantra. Pause. Breathe. Choose. To bridge the gap between reaction and response, you need a psychological circuit breaker. You need something to stop the electricity of the amygdala before it reaches your mouth or your hands. This is the mantra you must memorize. Pause. Breathe. Choose. 1. The pause. The moment you feel a surge of emotion, anger, fear, anxiety, or even overexcitement, you must freeze. This is a physical and mental stop. Do not say the word that is on the tip of your tongue. Do not hit send on the email. The pause is where your power lives. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, famously said, between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. 2. The breathe. When you are in reaction mode, your breathing becomes shallow and rapid. This sends a signal to your brain that you are in danger, which creates more stress, which creates shallower breathing. It is a feedback loop of panic. By taking one deep, diaphragmatic breath, expanding your belly, not just your chest, you manually override the nervous system. You are sending a biological signal to your brain saying, "We are safe. There is no tiger." This resets the prefrontal cortex and brings your logical mind back online. 3. The choose. Only after the pause and the breath can you choose. This is where you ask yourself the golden question. What does this moment require of me? Does it require a defense? Usually not. Does it require silence? Often. Does it require a firm, clear statement of facts? Perhaps. By choosing, you are the architect of your own life rather than a victim of your circumstances. The 5-second mental gap. Research in neurobiology suggests that the chemical surge of an emotion lasts approximately 6 seconds. If you can create a 5 to 10-second gap between the stimulus and your action, the chemical fog begins to lift. This gap is your greatest competitive advantage. In a negotiation, the person who can sit in silence for 5 seconds after a lowball offer is the one who wins. The person who feels the urge to fill the silence out of discomfort is the one who loses. When you practice the 5-second gap, you instantly increase your perceived authority. Why? Because people who are in control of themselves appear to be in control of the environment. High-status individuals move slower, speak slower, and react less than those of lower status. By claiming that 5-second gap, you are signaling to everyone in the room and to your own subconscious that you are the authority figure in your own life. Case study: the power of the gap. Imagine a CEO, Sarah, whose company just lost its biggest client. Her initial reaction is a mixture of terror and blame. She wants to call an emergency meeting and demand to know who messed up. She wants to vent her frustration to her board. If she follows that reaction, she spreads panic throughout the organization. Talent starts looking for new jobs. The board loses confidence in her leadership. Instead, Sarah uses the pause, breathe, choose method. She sits in her office for 10 minutes in total silence. She breathes until her heart rate returns to 60 beats per minute. She chooses her move. She realizes that blaming people won't bring the client back. She realizes that the team needs to feel focused, not fearful. She calls the meeting, but instead of yelling, she says, "We've lost the client." This is a setback, but it's also an opportunity to pivot toward the new market we've been discussing. Here is the plan for the next 90 days. By choosing her response, she turned a potential collapse into a moment of unified momentum. Practical exercise: the trigger audit. To master this chapter, you must identify your reaction triggers. Everyone has them. Identify: what are the 3 things that most consistently make you lose your cool? E.g., being interrupted, slow drivers, passive-aggressive emails, feeling unappreciated. Anticipate: tomorrow, go into your day expecting one of these triggers to happen. Say to yourself, at some point today, someone will probably interrupt me. When they do, I will see it as a training opportunity. Execute: when the trigger happens, do not fight the emotion, feel the anger or annoyance, but pause. Take your breath. Count to 5. Then, and only then, decide what your most powerful response would be. Chapter summary: reaction is an instinctive, defensive reflex that gives your power away. Response is a deliberate, strategic choice that keeps you in control. The limbic hijack is a biological process. You must manually override it with the pause, breathe, choose mantra. The 5-second gap is the hallmark of high-authority individuals. Your goal is not to stop feeling emotions. It is to stop letting emotions dictate your actions. Stop reacting to the world as it is. Start responding to the world as you want it to be. Chapter 2: calm is a competitive advantage. The intelligence trap. We are taught from a young age that intelligence is the ultimate predictor of success. We strive for high grades, prestigious degrees, and technical expertise. We assume that the smartest person in the room will naturally be the one who leads, the one who solves the problem, and the one who wins the day. But life is rarely lived in the controlled environment of an IQ test. Life happens in the heat of conflict, under the crushing weight of deadlines, and in the face of unexpected disasters. In these high-stakes moments, raw intelligence often takes a backseat to something much more potent: emotional composure. There is a phenomenon known as cognitive narrowing. When you become stressed, angry, or anxious, your brain literally shuts down access to your higher-level functions. You lose the ability to see the big picture. You lose your creative problem-solving skills. You lose your nuance. Essentially, an emotional genius performs like a calm amateur. In any high-pressure environment, whether it's a boardroom, a courtroom, or an operating room, the person who remains calm is effectively smarter than the person who is panicking, even if their baseline IQ is lower. Why? Because the calm person has access to 100% of their mental resources, while the emotional person is operating on a measly 20%. Calm is not a personality trait. It is a competitive advantage. It is the ability to maintain your mental clarity when everyone else is losing theirs. The physiology of power. Most people try to think themselves into being calm. They tell themselves, "Don't be nervous," or "Stay cool." This rarely works. You cannot use a panicked mind to fix a panicked mind. To achieve true composure, you must work from the outside in. You must master the physiology of calm. By changing your physical state, you force your brain to follow suit. There are 3 pillars to the physiology of composure: breathing, posture, and voice. 1. The breathing of a predator, not the prey. When a gazelle senses a lion, its breathing becomes fast and shallow. It is preparing to run or die. When a human is nervous about a presentation or angry at a spouse, they mirror this prey breathing. To flip the switch to competitor mode, you must adopt low and slow breathing. This means breathing into your belly, the diaphragm, rather than your upper chest. The technique: inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds. This is known as box breathing, and it is used by Navy SEALs and elite athletes to reset their nervous system in the middle of combat. It manually stimulates the vagus nerve, which triggers the rest and digest system, effectively killing the fight or flight response. 2. The posture of certainty. Emotional people shrink. When we feel threatened or insecure, our shoulders hunch, our necks tuck in, and we try to occupy as little space as possible. This is a defensive posture. Calm, powerful people occupy their space. They keep their shoulders back, their spine straight, and their chin neutral. This isn't about alpha posturing. It's about signaling to your own brain that you are not under threat. Research has shown that holding an expansive, open posture for just 2 minutes lowers cortisol, the stress hormone, and increases testosterone, the confidence hormone. When you sit or stand with a relaxed, upright posture, you are telling the world, and your own endocrine system, that you are the one in control of the environment. 3. The steady voice. The voice is the ultimate tell of emotional state. When someone is anxious, their vocal cords tighten, causing their pitch to rise and their speech to accelerate. They stumble over words or use filler sounds like and because their brain is moving faster than their mouth. The competitive advantage of calm is found in the tempo. A calm person speaks slightly slower than the average person. They are not afraid of a 2-second pause in the middle of a sentence. They lower their register, speaking from the chest rather than the throat. By slowing down your speech, you force others to slow down their listening. You command the rhythm of the interaction. You signal that what you have to say is worth waiting for. The visibility gap. Why calm people see more. There is a fundamental truth in high-performance psychology. Calm people see what emotional people miss. Imagine a crowded, smoke-filled room where everyone is searching for the exit. The emotional people are running, screaming, and bumping into walls. Because they are in a state of high arousal, their perceptual field has narrowed to a tiny point. They see the smoke, they see the fire, and they see the person in front of them. The calm person, however, keeps their peripheral vision open. Because their heart rate is steady, their brain continues to process environmental data. They notice the small exit sign in the corner that everyone else ran past. They notice the fire extinguisher on the wall. They notice the window that is slightly ajar. In business, this visibility gap is where the money is made. In a heated negotiation, the emotional negotiator is focused on winning the point or defending their ego. They miss the subtle shift in the opponent's body language that signals they are willing to compromise. They miss the hidden opportunity to trade a small concession for a massive long-term gain. The calm person is an observer. They are the eye of the storm. While everyone else is caught up in the drama of the moment, the calm person is collecting data. They are seeing the patterns, the weaknesses, and the openings. Repetition phrase: calm people see what emotional people miss. The leader as a non-anxious presence. In family systems theory, there is a concept called the non-anxious presence. In any group, a family, a sports team, or a corporation, anxiety is contagious. If the leader is anxious, the team will be paralyzed. If the parent is frantic, the children will be unstable. However, calm is also contagious. When you remain composed in a crisis, you act as a psychological anchor for everyone else. People are biologically programmed to look to the most composed person in the room for cues on how to behave. By being the calmest person, you naturally ascend to a position of leadership, regardless of your official title. Consider the story of Captain Chesley Sully Sullenberger. When both engines of his plane failed over New York City, he didn't scream. He didn't panic. If you listen to the cockpit voice recordings, his voice is eerily steady. He gave short, clear instructions. He focused entirely on what he could control. Because he was calm, his co-pilot remained functional. Because the cockpit was professional, the flight attendants remained orderly. Because the crew was orderly, 155 people stayed calm enough to evacuate a sinking plane in freezing water. Sully didn't think his way to a miracle. His calm allowed his training to take over. Pressure doesn't build character. It reveals the training that your calm allows you to access. Case study: the boardroom coup. Think of Mark, a senior executive at a tech firm. During a high-stakes board meeting, a rival executive launched a surprise attack, accusing Mark's department of gross mismanagement. The rival was loud, red-faced, and used aggressive gestures. He was trying to provoke a reaction. He wanted Mark to get defensive, to stutter, or to lose his temper. If Mark reacted with anger, the board would see two squabbling executives. Instead, Mark used the physiology of power. He leaned back slightly, expanding his posture. He took a slow, deep breath. He waited 3 full seconds after the rival finished speaking, a silence that felt like an eternity to everyone in the room. Then, in a low, steady voice, Mark said, "I appreciate your passion for the company's performance. However, the data doesn't support your conclusion. Let's look at the quarterly audits together." Mark didn't just win the argument, he won the room. The rival looked like an emotional child, while Mark looked like the adult in charge. Mark saw the rival's desperation, and he used his composure as a shield. Practical exercise: the cold exposure of composure. You cannot wait for a crisis to practice being calm. You must build your composure muscle in low-stakes environments. The slow speech challenge. In your next 3 phone calls or meetings, consciously speak 10% slower than usual. Focus on the pauses between your sentences. Notice how people react to your measured pace. The stillness drill. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Sit in a chair with perfect, relaxed posture. Do not move. Do not itch your nose. Do not fidget. Simply breathe low and slow. This trains your brain to accept physical stillness even when your mind wants to jump. The conflict observation. The next time someone is angry with you, or you witness a conflict, do not focus on the words being said. Instead, observe the person's physiology. Notice their breathing, their shaking hands, their high-pitched voice. By observing the emotion rather than absorbing it, you remain the calm observer who sees what others miss. Chapter summary. Intelligence is useless without composure. Emotional arousal lowers your functional IQ. Master the 3 pillars of physiology: low and slow breathing, expansive posture, and a steady, measured voice. The visibility gap. High arousal states narrow your vision. Calm expands it, allowing you to see opportunities and patterns that others miss. Calm is contagious. By being a non-anxious presence, you naturally lead and stabilize those around you. The goal is to be the eye of the storm. Let the world spin around you while you remain still. Repetition phrase: calm people see what emotional people miss. Chapter 3. Clarity comes from silence. The plague of infinite input. We live in the loudest era in human history. I am not just talking about the decibel level of our cities, but the relentless, high-frequency noise of information. At any given moment, you are being beckoned by a chorus of voices. Social media feeds, news cycles, work notifications, the opinions of influencers, and the expectations of your social circle. We have been conditioned to believe that more information leads to better decisions. We think that if we just read one more article, check one more data point, or ask one more person for their opinion, the correct path will reveal itself. The opposite is true. In the world of high-stakes decision-making, information has a diminishing return. Beyond a certain point, more data doesn't provide more clarity, it creates more static. This static drowns out your intuition, blurs your logic, and paralyzes your ability to act. Clarity is not found by adding more. It is found by stripping away everything that isn't essential. If you want to think clearly, you must first learn to be silent. You must move from a state of constant consumption to a state of strategic withdrawal. The two types of noise. To find clarity, we must address the two forms of noise that sabotage our thinking: external noise and internal noise. 1. External noise, the thief of focus. External noise is the input you allow into your brain. Every time you check a notification, you are performing a task switch. It takes the human brain an average of 23 minutes to return to a state of deep focus after a single interruption. If you check your phone 4 times an hour, you are effectively living in a state of permanent cognitive impairment. External noise also includes the opinions of the many. When you are facing a major career move or personal crisis, the first thing most people do is poll the audience. They ask friends, family, and colleagues what they should do. But other people's opinions are filtered through their fears, their limitations, and their agendas. When you drown yourself in the opinions of others, you lose the sound of your own conviction. 2. Internal noise, the fog of overthinking. Internal noise is the mental chatter that happens inside your skull. It is the rehearsal of past arguments, the worrying about future scenarios that will never happen, and the constant self-judgment. Internal noise is the primary cause of analysis paralysis. This is when you have so many what-ifs running through your mind that you can no longer see the most obvious, powerful move right in front of you. Overthinking is often mistaken for deep thought, but they are opposites. Deep thought is a laser beam. Overthinking is a broken light bulb scattering energy in every direction. The science of the silent brain. Neurologically, silence is not a passive state. When you stop the constant stream of input, your brain switches to what neuroscientists call the default mode network, DMN. The DMN is the system responsible for making connections between seemingly unrelated ideas. It is the incubation phase of creativity. This is why your eureka moments never happen while you are staring at a spreadsheet or scrolling through a feed. They happen when you are in the shower, on a walk, or staring out a window. In those moments of silence, your brain is finally free to organize the data it has already collected. It filters out the garbage and highlights the patterns. Silence is where the noise of the day settles, leaving the gold of the strategy at the bottom. Strategic withdrawal, the think week. Some of the most powerful people in the world build silent sanctuaries into their lives. Bill Gates famously started taking think weeks, 7 days twice a year, where he would disappear into a cabin in the woods with no computer, no phone, and no visitors. He would simply read and think. Some of Microsoft's most pivotally successful strategies were born in that silence. You may not be able to take a week off, but you can take a think hour. You can take a silent Saturday. Clarity requires a buffer zone. If you are moving from meeting to meeting, email to email, you are merely reacting. You are not strategizing. To act powerfully, you must create a gap of silence where you can ask yourself, is this actually the best use of my life right now? Silence as a tactical weapon in negotiations. In communication, most people use words to cover up their discomfort. They feel that if they aren't talking, they aren't winning. In reality, silence is the ultimate position of power in any negotiation. When you ask a difficult question or state your price, and then you remain silent, you are forcing the other person to deal with their own internal noise. Most people cannot handle silence. They will start talking to fill the void. In doing so, they often reveal their true position, offer concessions, or signal their desperation. By being comfortable with silence, you signal that you are not desperate. You signal that you have thinking clarity. You are not reacting to their words. You are observing their behavior. Case study: the career pivot. Consider David, a high-level marketing director who felt stuck. He was burnt out, his team was underperforming, and he felt like he was running to stand still. He spent his days in back-to-back meetings and his nights answering emails. His noise level was at 100%. David was considering quitting his job and starting a consultancy, but he was paralyzed by the fear of losing his salary. He spent months asking friends for advice, and he got a dozen different answers. Finally, David did something radical. He booked a hotel room in a city where he knew no one for 48 hours. He left his phone at home. He took only a notebook and a pen. The first 6 hours were agonizing. His brain was twitched, it kept looking for the phone, craving the hit of dopamine from a notification. He felt anxious and bored. But around the 12-hour mark, the sediment started to settle. In the silence, he realized that he didn't actually want to start a consultancy. He just hated the administrative part of his current job. He realized that if he hired a specific type of assistant and changed his meeting structure, 90% of his stress would vanish. He didn't need a new career, he needed a new system. He found that clarity in 48 hours of silence, something he hadn't been able to find in 6 months of thinking about it amidst the noise. Practical exercise: the noise fast. To reclaim your clarity, you must detox from the noise. Try these 3 levels of silence. Level 1. The daily buffer, 15 minutes. For the first 30 minutes after you wake up and the last 30 minutes before you sleep, zero input. No phone, no podcast, no news. Sit with your coffee or lay in bed and just let your thoughts drift. Notice what bubbles up when you aren't pushing it down with fresh data. Level 2. The silent walk, 30 minutes. Go for a walk without headphones. Do not call anyone. Do not listen to music. Observe the environment. This unstructured time allows the default mode network to start processing your stuck problems. Level 3. The deep think block, 4 hours. Once a week, schedule 4 hours of strategic silence. Put your phone in another room. No internet. Focus on one single problem or goal. Write about it. Draw diagrams. Sit in the silence until it stops being uncomfortable and starts being productive. The power of not knowing. Part of the noise we create comes from the ego's need to know the answer immediately. When we face a problem, we feel a frantic need to solve it right now. Clarity often requires you to sit in the I don't know for a while. It requires you to let the question hang in the silence until the answer matures. This is the difference between a half-baked reaction and a fully formed strategy. Repetition phrase: silence is where strategy is born. Chapter summary: noise is the enemy of quality. Constant input destroys your ability to see the high-leverage move. External noise is data and opinions. Internal noise is overthinking and ego. Both must be silenced to find clarity. The default mode network is your brain's strategy engine, but it only turns on when you stop the input. Silence is power in communication. The person who can sit in silence longest usually has the most control over the interaction. Strategic withdrawal is a requirement for high-level leadership. You cannot lead the battle if you are buried in the trenches. Before you make your next big move, stop. Step back. Find the silence. Repetition phrase: silence is where strategy is born. Chapter 4. Discipline your inner dialogue. The most important conversation you'll ever have. We are never truly alone. From the moment you wake up until the moment you fall into a deep sleep, there is a voice in your head. It is a constant, rhythmic narration of your life. It comments on the weather, it critiques your reflection in the mirror, it analyzes your boss's tone of voice, and it predicts your future success or failure. Most people treat this inner voice as an objective truth teller. They assume that because a thought occurred inside their head, it must be them thinking it. They believe that if the voice says, "You're going to mess this up," it is a warning from a wise, intuitive part of themselves. In reality, your inner dialogue is often nothing more than a collection of old scripts, childhood fears, and evolutionary survival instincts that are no longer useful. For many, that inner voice isn't a coach, it's a saboteur. If you spoke to your friends the way you speak to yourself in the privacy of your own mind, you would likely have no friends left. If you spoke to your employees the way you speak to yourself after a mistake, you would be sued for creating a hostile work environment. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your internal dialogue. You cannot stay calm or act powerfully if the commander in your head is constantly screaming that the ship is sinking. Discipline is not just about what you do with your body. It is about what you allow to happen in your mind. The reticular activating system. You see what you say. Your brain has a filter called the reticular activating system, RAS. Its job is to filter out the millions of data points you encounter every second and only let through what is important. How does the RAS know what is important? It listens to the words you repeat. If you tell yourself, "I'm bad with names," your RAS will prioritize forgetting names. It will literally filter out the information when someone introduces themselves because you have instructed your brain that names are things I don't do. If you tell yourself, "This is going to be a stressful day," your brain will spend the next 8 hours looking for evidence of stress, the traffic, the cold coffee, the short email, while ignoring everything that is going right. Your mind is a faithful servant. It obeys the commands you give it through your internal dialogue. If you give it the command of "I can't," "I'm stuck," or "this is a disaster," your mind will work tirelessly to prove you right. Anchor phrase. Your mind obeys the words you repeat. The language of sabotage, vague fear. The greatest weapon of the inner critic is vagueness. When we are afraid or overwhelmed, our internal dialogue becomes general and absolute. We use words like always, never, everyone, and everything. I always mess this up. I'll never get ahead. This entire project is a disaster. Everyone thinks I'm a fraud. These statements are psychologically paralyzing because they provide no exit ramp. If something is always true, there is no point in trying to change it. Vague language creates a fog of war in your mind, making it impossible to see the next logical step. To act powerfully, you must replace vague fear with precise language. Precision over positivity. Many self-help books suggest positive thinking, replacing a negative thought with a happy one. If you're thinking "I'm broke," they suggest saying "I am a billionaire." The problem is that your brain knows you're lying. This creates cognitive dissonance, which actually increases stress. I'm not asking you to be positive, I'm asking you to be accurate. Accuracy is the antidote to anxiety. When you move from "I can't do this" to "I don't know how to do this yet," you aren't lying to yourself. You are stating a factual reality that contains a path forward. The power of the linguistic pivot. Here are the 4 most common sabotaging phrases and how to pivot them into powerful, disciplined dialogue. 1. From "I can't" to "I am learning how to." "I can't" is a dead end. It shuts down the prefrontal cortex. "I am learning how to" is an invitation to growth. It acknowledges the current gap in your skill without making it a permanent character flaw. 2. From "I have to" "I get to" or "I choose to." "I have to" makes you a victim of your schedule. It creates a sense of being burdened and oppressed. "I choose to" reminds you of your agency. Even if it's a difficult task, acknowledging that you are choosing the work because you value the outcome, like a paycheck or promotion, restores your power. 3. From "this is a problem" to "this is a situation." The word "problem" triggers a stress response. The word "situation" is neutral. A situation is just a set of facts that requires a response. When you reframe a crisis as a complex situation, you lower the emotional temperature in your brain. 4. From "I am stressed" to "I am prepared." Physiologically, stress and excitement are almost identical. Both involve a racing heart, shallow breathing, and heightened senses. The only difference is the label your mind gives it. When you tell yourself "I am prepared" or "I am focused," You take the energy of stress and channel it into precision. The identity trap, I am versus I feel. One of the most dangerous things you can do in your internal dialogue is to attach your temporary emotions to your permanent identity. Most people say, I am anxious, I am angry, or I am a failure. By using the words I am, you are telling your brain that this state is part of your DNA. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Disciplined thinkers use the language of observation. Instead of I am anxious, say I am experiencing a sensation of anxiety. Instead of I am a failure, say I failed at this specific task and I am analyzing the data to improve. When you separate yourself from your feelings, you become the observer rather than the victim. You are the sky. The emotions are just the clouds passing through. The sky remains calm regardless of how dark the clouds are. Case study, the surgeon's mantra. Consider the case of a trauma surgeon named Dr. Aries. In the high-pressure environment of an emergency room, the internal dialogue can be the difference between life and death. Early in his career, when a patient arrived with a catastrophic injury, Dr. Aries would feel his inner voice start to spiral. There's too much blood. I don't know if I can stop this. We're losing him. This internal noise made his hands less steady and his decision-making slower. He realized he needed to discipline his dialogue. He developed a precision script. The moment a crisis began, he would tell himself, the patient is bleeding. I have the tools to address this. Step 1. Apply pressure. Step 2. Identify the source. By using precise, task-oriented language, he silenced the vague fear. He moved from I am overwhelmed to I am executing a process. His mind obeyed the words he repeated, and his body followed with quiet, powerful action. The third-person technique. If you find it difficult to speak kindly to yourself, try an evidence-based psychological trick. Speak to yourself in the third person. Research from the University of Michigan found that when people used their own names while talking through a challenge, saying, John, you are feeling overwhelmed, but you have handled this before, they were significantly better at regulating their emotions than those who used I. Talking to yourself by name creates psychological distance. It allows you to give yourself the same wise, objective advice you would give to a best friend. It breaks the loop of the emotional self and engages the observer self. Practical exercise. The dialogue audit. For the next 24 hours, you are going to be a spy in your own mind. Catch the absolute. Every time you hear yourself use the words always, never, can't, or every, stop. Write the sentence down. Apply precision. Rewrite the sentence to be 100% accurate and neutral. Sabotage. I'm never going to finish this report. Precision. I have 40% of the report left to do, and it is taking longer than I expected. I will focus on the next 3 pages now. The so what. Filter. When the inner critic attacks you with a what if. E.g., what if they hate my presentation? Answer it with a disciplined so what. If they hate it, I will ask for specific feedback, refine my approach, and present better next time. I will still be alive, and I will have more data than I have now. Chapter summary. Your mind is a servant to your language. It will find evidence for whatever you repeat to it. Vagueness is the tool of the critic. Precision is the tool of the leader. Replace I can't with I am learning how. This creates a path for action. Separate identity from emotion. You are not your anxiety. You are the one observing the anxiety. Use third-person self-talk to create the distance necessary for clarity and calm. Anchor phrase. Your mind obeys the words you repeat. Chapter 5. Control the moment. Control the outcome. The architecture of overwhelm. When we face a massive challenge, a career-defining presentation, a grueling marathon, a high-stakes exam, or even the daunting task of rebuilding a life after a setback, our first instinct is to look at the mountain in its entirety. We look at the summit, obscured by clouds, and we feel small. We calculate the thousands of steps required to get there, the potential pitfalls along the way, and the sheer magnitude of the outcome we desire. This is the birth of anxiety. Anxiety is, fundamentally, a time travel error. It is the result of your mind living in a future that hasn't happened yet, trying to solve problems that don't exist yet, and worrying about an outcome you cannot yet touch. When you focus on the outcome, you lose your grip on the only thing that can actually influence that outcome, the present moment. The more you obsess over winning the game, the less mental energy you have to play the play. This chapter is about the art of temporal shrinking, the discipline of narrowing your focus until your entire world consists only of the task immediately in front of you. Repetition phrase: win this moment. The rest follows. The psychology of the micro-win. High performers in the most high-pressure fields on Earth, special forces operators, Olympic athletes, and emergency surgeons, do not focus on the big win while they are in the heat of the action. If a SEAL is in the middle of a complex operation, thinking about the medal he might receive afterward is a distraction that could get him killed. He focuses on the corner he is turning. He focuses on his breathing. He focuses on the next 5 seconds. This is the concept of the micro-win. A micro-win is a victory so small that it is almost impossible to fail at, yet it provides the psychological fuel necessary for the next step. When you stack enough micro-wins together, you create unstoppable momentum. Neurologically, every time you achieve a goal, no matter how small, your brain releases a hit of dopamine. Dopamine is not just a feel-good chemical, it is a do-it-again chemical. It increases your focus, your energy, and your willingness to take risks. By focusing on a micro-win, you are essentially hacking your brain's reward system to keep you in a state of high performance. Shrinking the world. Execution in 3 scenarios. To understand how to control the moment, let's look at 3 common high-pressure scenarios and how outcome focus destroys performance while moment focus saves it. 1. The high-stakes presentation. The outcome focus. You are standing backstage. You are thinking, what if they don't like me? What if I forget my lines? What if I don't get the funding? Your heart races. Your palms sweat. You have stage fright. The moment focus. You shrink your world. You don't think about the 45-minute speech. You think about the first sentence. You think about making eye contact with one person in the front row. You think about the quality of your next breath. By winning the moment of the introduction, the outcome of the speech takes care of itself. 2. The final exam or professional certification. The outcome focus. You look at the 100-question booklet and think, if I fail this, I've wasted 3 years of study. My parents will be disappointed. Your brain freezes. You spend 10 minutes staring at question 1 because your mind is actually 100 questions ahead. The moment focus. There is no exam, there is only this question. You read the words. You analyze the logic. You answer. Then, you delete that question from your mind and move to the next. You are not taking an exam. You are having 100 separate, small conversations. 3. The physical setback, illness or injury. The outcome focus. You think about the 6 months of physical therapy ahead. You think about the life you used to have. You feel depressed and paralyzed by the distance between where you are and where you want to be. The moment focus. Your only job is this one repetition of this one exercise. Your only job is to eat this one healthy meal. Your only job is to get through this 1 hour with a positive attitude. You win the hour. Then you win the next. The winner's effect and momentum. In biology, there is a concept called the winner's effect. It describes how an animal that wins a fight against a weak opponent is statistically more likely to win its next fight, even against a stronger opponent. The act of winning changes the animal's chemistry. It becomes more aggressive, more confident, and more physically capable. You can trigger the winner's effect in your own life through micro-wins. If you wake up and your room is a mess, your inbox is full, and you feel overwhelmed, do not try to fix your life. That is an outcome. Instead, win the moment. Spend 2 minutes making your bed perfectly. That is a win. Spend 5 minutes clearing 3 emails. That is a win. Each micro-win signals to your brain that you are a person who wins. By the time you get to the big task of the day, you are no longer the person who was overwhelmed an hour ago. You are a person with a winning streak. The 5-minute room. In architecture, there is a concept that you can only experience one room at a time. You cannot be in the hallway and the kitchen simultaneously. Apply this to your time management. Treat your day as a series of rooms. When you are in a meeting, you are in the meeting room. You are not in the I wonder what's for dinner room or the I'm worried about my mortgage room. The greatest gift you can give your performance is total presence. When you give 100% of your attention to the present action, you eliminate the friction caused by partial attention. Anxiety is simply the friction caused by trying to be in 2 time rooms at once. Case study: the cold caller's breakthrough. Consider Marcus, a young salesperson who was terrified of cold calling. He would sit at his desk for hours, staring at his list of leads. He was obsessed with the outcome: I need to make 10 sales today or I'm going to lose my job. Because he was focused on the sales, the outcome, he was terrified of the rejection, the obstacle. He was living in a future where he was fired. His mentor gave him a different goal: stop trying to make sales. Your only job today is to win the next 60 seconds. When you dial the phone, your only goal is to speak the first sentence clearly. That's it. Whether they hang up or buy is irrelevant. Did you speak the first sentence well? If yes, you won. Marcus shifted his focus. He stopped selling and started executing sentences. He found that by winning the moment of the introduction, he stayed calm. Because he was calm, he sounded more confident. Because he sounded more confident, people stayed on the line longer. By the end of the month, Marcus was the top performer. He didn't get there by wanting the sales more. He got there by caring about the sales outcome less and the moment execution more. Practical exercise. The next right move drill. The next time you feel the cold grip of overwhelm or anxiety, use this process to regain control. Stop the time travel. Recognize that you are worrying about a future outcome. Say it out loud: I am currently time traveling. I am trying to solve a problem that hasn't happened yet. The 60-second circle. Draw an imaginary circle around yourself that is only 3 feet wide. Inside this circle, only the next 60 seconds exist. Outside the circle, the past and future are locked away. Identify the micro-win. Ask yourself, what is the single most effective thing I can do in the next 60 seconds? Not the next hour. Not the next day. Just the next minute. E.g., I will open the document. I will take 3 deep breaths. I will put on my running shoes. Execute and validate. Do the task. Then, mentally check it off. Say, win. Then ask the question again. Control the moment. Control the outcome. You cannot control whether you get the job. You cannot control whether the audience loves your speech. You cannot control the economy. If you spend your energy trying to control things you can't, you will be perpetually anxious and weak. However, you can control your preparation. You can control your effort. You can control your breath. You can control the very next word that comes out of your mouth. Paradoxically, when you stop trying to control the outcome and focus entirely on controlling the moment, the outcome tends to take care of itself. The person who is all in on the present is the most formidable person in any room. Repetition phrase. Win this moment. The rest follows. Chapter 6. Detach from chaos. The invisible hook. Imagine you are walking through a crowded market. All around you, there are vendors shouting, people pushing, and colors clashing. Suddenly, someone bumps into you aggressively. They turn around and shout an insult. In that split second, an invisible hook is thrown. If you get angry, if you shout back, if you spend the next 3 hours thinking about what you should have said, you have swallowed the hook. You are now entangled in that person's chaos. You are no longer walking your own path. You are being towed behind theirs. Chaos is not just a messy room or a busy schedule. Chaos is the emotional turbulence of the world around you. The office politics, the family drama, the volatile news cycle, and the unpredictable moods of other people. Most people believe that to be a good or empathetic person, they must feel everything deeply. They think they should be upset when others are upset and outraged when the world is outrageous. But there is a massive difference between indifference and detachment. Indifference is cold. It says, I don't care what happens to you. Detachment is powerful. It says, I care about the outcome, but I will not allow the chaos of the process to consume my peace. To act powerfully, you must remain unhooked. You must learn to observe the storm without becoming the storm. Core line: You perform better when you're not entangled. The observer effect. In physics, there is a concept called the observer effect, which states that the mere act of observing a phenomenon changes that phenomenon. In psychology, the same is true for your internal state. When you are entangled in a situation, you are in it. You are the protagonist in a high-stakes drama. Your heart rate is high, your ego is threatened, and your perspective is limited. When you detach, you move from being the actor on the stage to being the director in the wings. You are still present, you are still watching, but you have created a psychological distance. This distance allows you to see the scripts people are playing out. You see that the person yelling at you isn't actually mad at you. They are playing out a script of insecurity or a bad morning. By observing rather than absorbing, you gain the high ground. From the high ground, you can see the traps, the exits, and the tactical moves that the people down in the chaos of the trenches simply cannot see. Handling criticism without the ego hit. One of the most common ways we get entangled is through criticism. Whether it's a formal performance review or a snide comment on social media, criticism feels like a direct attack on our identity. The emotional person hears, "Your report was sloppy," and translates it to, "I am a failure and I'm going to lose my job." This is entanglement. It leads to defensiveness, which leads to further chaos. The detached person uses the data filter. When criticism comes your way, you look at it as if you were a scientist examining a specimen. You ask, "Is there a grain of truth here? If yes, what is the specific data point I can use to improve? If no, what does this criticism tell me about the sender's state of mind?" By detaching yourself from your work, you can listen to the harshest critiques with a calm face. You aren't indifferent, you want to do good work, but you are not entangled. You treat criticism as a free consulting service rather than a personal assault. Social pressure and the solid self. We are social creatures. We have an evolutionary drive to fit in, to be liked, and to mirror the emotions of the tribe. This is why, when a room gets tense, we get tense. When everyone is complaining about the company, we feel the urge to join in. Detachment allows you to maintain a solid self. A solid self is someone who can be in a room full of panic and remain calm. They can be in a room full of gossip and remain silent. They can be in a room full of praise and remain humble. The solid self realizes that other people's opinions of them are actually none of their business. Other people's opinions are a reflection of their filters, their biases, and their current mood. If you depend on the world's likes to feel good, you are entangled in a system you cannot control. If you detach and depend on your own internal standards, you become unshakable. The camera lens technique. When you find yourself in the middle of a chaotic situation, perhaps a heated family argument or a failing project at work, use this mental exercise to detach instantly. Imagine there is a movie camera mounted on the wall in the corner of the room. Mentally shift your perspective into that camera lens. Look down at the room. See the person who looks like you standing there. Notice their posture. Notice the other people waving their arms or raising their voices. Observe the plot of the scene. From the perspective of the camera, the drama looks almost comical. It's just a scene. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. By filming the moment rather than living it, your nervous system begins to settle. You move from the amygdala back into the prefrontal cortex. You are no longer a victim of the drama. You are a witness to it. Case study: the hostage negotiator. Think about the job of a high-level hostage negotiator. They are dealing with someone who is in a state of absolute chaos, terror, rage, and desperation. If the negotiator gets entangled, if they get angry back, or if they let the fear of the outcome paralyze them, people die. A great negotiator is the master of detachment. They are intensely tuned in to the other person, empathy, but they are not absorbing the other person's emotions, detachment. They remain the calm pole in the middle of the whirlwind. Because they aren't entangled, they can hear the subtle tells in the kidnapper's voice. They can wait out the silences. They can make rational decisions about when to push and when to pull. Their power comes from the fact that they are the only person in the interaction who is not being governed by the chaos. Performing better when you're not entangled. In any performance, sports, music, public speaking, or business, there is a sweet spot of engagement. If you care too little, indifference, you lack the energy to perform. If you care too much, entanglement, you become tight. Your muscles stiffen, your thinking narrows, and you choke. Detachment allows you to care about the process while being outcome independent. When a basketball player is in the zone, they aren't thinking about the score or the crowd or the scouts in the stands. They are detached from the consequences and fully attached to the action. You perform best when you are light. Entanglement makes you heavy. It adds the weight of what will they think, and what if I fail, to every move you make. To act powerfully, you must drop the weight. Practical exercise. The drama fast. To build your detachment muscles, you must practice staying unhooked in small ways. The silent listener drill. The next time someone comes to you to complain about a third party or share some office tea, listen with full attention, but do not contribute. Do not say "that's so true" or "I can't believe they did that." Just nod and say "I hear you." Notice how much energy you save by not hooking into the drama. The social media observer test. Scroll through a newsfeed or a comment section that usually makes you angry. Instead of feeling the anger, look for the hooks. Say to yourself, "Oh, that's an interesting hook designed to make me feel outraged. I see it. I'm not taking it." The third-person review. At the end of a stressful day, write a one-page summary of your day in the third person. John had a difficult meeting. He felt a surge of frustration when the client changed the requirements, but he remained professional. This trains your brain to see your own life as a series of events to be managed rather than a series of traumas to be endured. Chapter summary. Entanglement is a choice. You choose to swallow the hooks the world throws at you. Detachment is not indifference. You care about your goals, but you refuse to let the chaos of the environment dictate your internal state. The observer effect. By viewing a situation as a witness rather than a victim, you regain your logical high ground. Criticism is just data. Filter out the emotion and use the facts to fuel your growth. The solid self remains steady regardless of the social pressure or the mood of the tribe. You perform best when you are light. Drop the weight of the outcome and the expectations of others. Core line. You perform better when you're not entangled. Chapter 7. Think in decisions, not feelings. The mood-based life. Most people wake up in the morning and perform a mood check before they decide what kind of day they are going to have. They check their internal weather. Do I feel motivated? Do I feel tired? Do I feel anxious? Do I feel like working on that project? If the mood is good, they are productive. If the mood is bad, they procrastinate, hide, or distract themselves. This is the mood-based life, and it is the most common reason for unfulfilled potential. When you live by your moods, you are effectively letting a hormonal cocktail, dictated by how much sleep you got, what you ate, or the last text message you received, run your destiny. High performers, however, operate on a decision-based system. They understand a fundamental truth of human nature. Feelings are volatile, unreliable, and temporary. Decisions, on the other hand, are the bricks with which you build a life. If you wait until you feel like it to do the hard work, you will never achieve anything of significance. Success is not found in the moments of high inspiration. It is found in the disciplined execution of a decision when you are bored, tired, or afraid. Repetition phrase. Feelings pass. Decisions compound. The biological trap. Why feelings lie. Our emotions were not designed to make us successful. They were designed to keep us safe. From an evolutionary perspective, safety meant staying in the cave, avoiding conflict, and conserving energy. This is why, when you decide to take a big risk, like starting a business or having a difficult conversation, your feelings scream no. Your brain interprets the new and unknown as dangerous and life-threatening. If you listen to your feelings in that moment, you will stay in the cave. You will play it safe. You will stay small. Your feelings are also susceptible to biological noise. Your blood sugar levels, your caffeine intake, and your circadian rhythm all influence your emotional state. Have you ever noticed how a problem seems catastrophic at 11 p.m. but manageable at 8 a.m.? The problem didn't change. Your biology did. If you run your life like a mood system, You are building your house on shifting sand. To act powerfully, you must build your life on a decision system. The decision filter, a 4-step system. To move from a mood-based life to a decision-based life, you need a filter. This is a mental framework you run every situation through to strip away the emotional static and reveal the most powerful move. The filter consists of 4 stages: facts, options, consequences, action. 1. Facts, the what. When we are emotional, we stop seeing facts and start seeing stories. The fact: your boss didn't reply to your email for 6 hours. The story: he's going to fire me. He thinks my work is terrible. He doesn't respect my time. In the first stage of the filter, you must ruthlessly strip away the story. What is the objective data? What would a security camera or a spreadsheet show? By focusing on the facts, you lower the emotional temperature of the brain. You move the problem from the feeling brain to the thinking brain. 2. Options, the how. Once you have the facts, you look for options. Most people in reaction mode see only 2 options: fight or flight. They either blow up or they shut down. A decision-based thinker forces themselves to find at least 3 to 5 options. I could ask for clarification. I could wait until the morning to follow up. I could talk to a colleague who has handled this before. I could pivot to a different task for now. By generating multiple options, you reclaim your agency. You are no longer a cornered animal. You are a strategist with a menu of choices. 3. Consequences, the then what. This is the most critical stage. Second-order thinking. Feelings only care about the immediate consequence, relief, safety, comfort. Decisions care about the long-term consequence. Ask yourself, if I choose option A, what happens in 10 minutes? In 10 months? In 10 years? If you react in anger to a client, option A, you might feel relief in 10 minutes. But in 10 months, you've lost the account and damaged your reputation. When you view life through the lens of consequences, the right decision usually becomes painfully obvious. 4. Action, the move. Once you have filtered the situation through facts, options, and consequences, you must act. This is where you separate yourself from your feelings. You might still feel afraid. You might still feel tired. But you act on the decision, not the feeling. You move because the system told you to move, not because you felt like it. Feelings as information, not instructions. I am not suggesting that you should become a robot. Emotions are a vital part of the human experience. The goal is not to stop feeling, but to stop obeying. Think of your feelings as a dashboard light in a car. If the check engine light comes on, it is providing you with information. It's telling you that something might be wrong. However, the light does not tell you how to fix the engine. It doesn't tell you where to drive the car. If you feel anxious about a meeting, that is information. It might mean you aren't prepared enough. It might mean you value the outcome highly. Use that information to prepare more. Decision. Do not use that information as an instruction to cancel the meeting. Mood. The power of deciding once. One of the greatest drains on your mental energy is decision fatigue. This happens when you have to make the same choice over and over again based on your mood. Should I go to the gym today? Should I eat this healthy meal or the junk food? Should I check my emails now or later? Every time you ask these questions, you are inviting your feeling brain to have a seat at the table. And your feeling brain will almost always vote for the easiest, most comfortable path. Powerful people decide once. They create life rules that bypass the mood check. I don't decide if I'm going to the gym, I just go every Tuesday at 6 a.m. It's a closed decision. I don't decide when to do deep work, I do it every morning from 8 to 10. The decision was made months ago. By deciding once, you preserve your clarity capital for the big, complex problems that actually require your creativity. You automate the small things so your feelings don't even have a chance to interfere. Case study: the Stoic investor. Consider Elias, a fund manager who oversees millions of dollars. In the world of investing, feelings are the fastest way to lose everything. When the market crashes, the feeling brain screams, "Sell! Get out!" Save what's left. This is why the average investor buys high when they feel greedy and confident, and sells low when they feel fearful and panicked. Elias doesn't trade on feelings. He has a decision system. He has a set of pre-written if-then rules. If a stock drops 10%, then I reevaluate the fundamentals. If the fundamentals are still sound, then I buy more, regardless of how scary the news feels. 1 year, his portfolio dropped 20% in a single month. He felt the pit in his stomach. He felt the urge to sell and hide. But he ran his filter. Facts: the companies he owned were still profitable. The market drop was due to external geopolitical noise. Options: sell now, hold, or buy more. Consequences: selling locks in a loss. Holding stays the course. Buying more increases long-term gains if the facts are right. Action: he bought more. 12 months later, the market recovered, and Elias's portfolio hit an all-time high. He didn't win because he was smarter than the other investors. He won because he replaced his mood system with a decision system. Compounding: the secret math of decisions. The reason this shift is so powerful is found in the math of compounding. A single mood-based decision, skipping a workout, sending a snappy text, procrastinating on a task, doesn't seem like a big deal. It's just one day, right? But decisions compound like interest in a bank account. One disciplined decision leads to a micro-win. A micro-win leads to increased confidence. Increased confidence leads to a better decision tomorrow. Conversely, one mood-based surrender makes it easier to surrender tomorrow. Over 5 years, the difference between the person who followed their decisions and the person who followed their moods is not a 10% difference in results, it is a 1000% difference. The person who followed their decisions has a different body, a different bank account, and a different reputation. They have built a life, while the other person is still waiting for the right mood to start. Practical exercise. The rule book. To start thinking in decisions, you must write your own operating manual. Identify 3 mood traps. What are 3 things you frequently avoid because you don't feel like it? E.g., cold calling, exercising, clearing your inbox. Create 3 closed decisions. Write a rule for each of these traps that removes the choice. Rule: I will make 5 cold calls at 9 a.m. before I check my personal messages. No exceptions. Rule: I go for a 20-minute walk every day after lunch, even if it's raining. The third person filter. When you are in a high-stakes moment and feeling emotional, ask yourself, if I were a consultant hired to solve this problem for a client, what would I tell them to do based on the facts? We are much better at making decision-based choices for others than for ourselves. Borrow that objectivity. Chapter summary. Mood-based living makes you a slave to your temporary biology. Decision-based living makes you the architect of your destiny. The decision filter. Facts, options, consequences, action. Use it to strip away the story. Feelings are information, not instructions. Listen to the dashboard light, but keep your hand on the wheel. Decide once. Automate your habits to avoid decision fatigue and bypass the feeling brain. The result of a decision compounds. A life is just a long-term collection of small, disciplined choices. Repetition phrase. Feelings pass. Decisions compound. Chapter 8. Move with quiet confidence. The performance of certainty. In our modern, hyper-connected world, we have confused confidence with visibility. We are surrounded by people who feel the need to broadcast every achievement, shout their opinions the loudest, and dominate every conversation to prove they belong. This is what we call loud confidence. Loud confidence is performative. It is fueled by the need for external validation. It is a fragile mask worn by people who are terrified that if they stop talking, stop posturing, or stop winning the room, they will be seen as inadequate. Loud confidence seeks to convince others. Quiet confidence, however, is not about convincing anyone. It is the result of a deep, internal alignment. It is the steady, unshakable belief in your own ability to handle whatever the moment requires. While loud confidence is a shield used for protection, quiet confidence is a root system that keeps you upright during the storm. Quiet confidence doesn't need to be announced because it is self-evident. It is seen in the way a person enters a room, the way they listen, and, most importantly, the way they act when things go wrong. Anchor. Let your preparation make the noise. The source. Competence over charisma. There is a dangerous myth that confidence is something you are born with, a spark of charisma that some people have and others don't. This leads people to try to fake it till they make it. They adopt power poses and practice firm handshakes, but inside, they feel like frauds. True, quiet confidence cannot be faked because it is built on a foundation of competence. You are confident in your ability to tie your shoes because you have done it 10,000 times. You don't need to brag about it. You just do it. Quiet confidence in high-stakes environments, like closing a deal, leading a team, or performing surgery, comes from the same place, the dark hours of preparation. When you have spent the time studying the data, practicing the skill, and anticipating the failures, you don't need to be loud. You have internalized the outcome. You move with a level of certainty that others find unnerving. While others are trying to sound like they know what they're doing, you are simply doing it. The power of the unsaid. One of the hallmarks of a person moving with quiet confidence is their comfort with silence and understatement. When a person is insecure, they use words as a weapon or a distraction. They over-explain their decisions. They interrupt others to assert their dominance. They feel a desperate need to fill every silence because silence feels like a void where they might be judged. The person with quiet confidence understands that the more you speak, the less people listen. They speak with economy. They say what needs to be said, and no more. They ask more questions than they give answers. They don't feel the need to defend themselves against minor slights or criticisms. Think of a high-level negotiation. The person who is loudly confident will list their accomplishments, brag about their other offers, and talk over the other party. The person with quiet confidence will state their price, explain the value once, and then sit in total, comfortable silence. They know the value of what they bring. They don't need to sell it, they just need to present it. Self-trust versus social trust. Most people live in a state of social trust. Their confidence is like a thermometer. It goes up when people praise them and down when people criticize them. This makes them easy to manipulate and inherently unstable. Quiet confidence is built on self-trust. This is the ability to keep promises to yourself. If you tell yourself you are going to wake up at 5 a.m. and you do it, your self-trust grows. If you tell yourself you will finish the report by noon and you do it, your self-trust grows. When you have a high level of self-trust, the opinions of others lose their bite. If someone calls you incompetent, but you have years of evidence, promises kept to yourself, that you are capable, the insult doesn't stick. You don't get angry, you get curious. You wonder why they feel the need to lash out. You stay calm because your valuation is handled internally, not externally. Case study: The Silent Architect. Consider the story of an architect named Elena. She was tasked with presenting a controversial design for a new city landmark to a board of skeptical, aggressive developers. Her competitors went before her. They used flashy digital animations, high-energy sales pitches, and spent their entire time trying to convince the board that their designs were the best in the world. They were loud, fast-talking, and defensive when questioned. Elena took a different approach. She walked in, laid out her physical blueprints, and stood by the window. She didn't start with a joke or a pitch. She said, "I designed this to solve 3 problems: wind load, foot traffic, and light. Here is the data." When the board members tried to trap her with aggressive questions, she didn't get flustered. She didn't raise her voice. She listened to their entire question, paused for 2 seconds, and provided a precise, data-backed answer. She didn't say, "I think," she said, "the math shows." At the end of the day, Elena won the contract. One board member later said, "The other guys were trying to sell us something. Elena looked like she had already built it in her head. We trusted her because she was the only one who didn't seem like she needed our approval." Elena's preparation made the noise. The invisibility rule. There is a profound power in being willing to be invisible while the work is being done. Loud confidence wants the credit during the process. It wants the likes on the workout photo. It wants the good job in the middle of the project. Quiet confidence is content to stay in the shadows until the results are undeniable. It understands that results are the only thing that cannot be argued with. You can argue with an opinion. You can argue with a pitch. You can argue with a boast. But you cannot argue with a finished, high-quality product. When you move with quiet confidence, you stop seeking status and start seeking utility. You focus on being useful, being effective, and being prepared. You let your results do the shouting for you. This makes you untouchable because by the time people notice you, you've already won. Body language, the stillness factor. Quiet confidence is physically expressed through stillness. If you watch a video of a world leader, a high-level CEO, or an elite athlete, notice how little they move when they aren't performing a specific task. They don't fidget with their pens. They don't touch their face. They don't shift their weight from foot to foot. They don't nod excessively to show they are listening. Insecure people are busy. They are constantly sending out microsignals to show that they are engaged, friendly, or important. The person with quiet confidence has a low signal-to-noise ratio. When they move, it is with purpose. When they speak, it is with intent. This physical stillness tells the world, I am comfortable in my own skin. I am not threatened by this environment. I do not need your constant reassurance. Practical exercise. The no defense challenge. To build quiet confidence, you must practice ego detachment. Try these 3 exercises. The 24-hour no brag. For an entire day, do not mention a single one of your accomplishments, your busy schedule, or your wins. If someone praises you, say thank you and move on. Notice the itch you feel to add more information to make yourself look better. Don't scratch it. The last to speak rule. In every meeting or group conversation today, make it your goal to be the very last person to speak. Listen to every perspective. Observe the dynamics. Then, summarize and provide your thought. Notice how much more weight your words carry when they are preceded by silence. The stillness drill. While waiting in line or sitting in a meeting, practice 0 fidgeting. Keep your hands relaxed and still. Keep your feet flat on the floor. Maintain a steady, neutral gaze. Observe how this physical stillness changes your internal feeling of authority. Move with quiet confidence. The world is full of people making noise. If you add your noise to the pile, you are just another voice in the crowd. But if you grow quiet, if you focus on your preparation, and if you let your results speak for you, you become a magnetic force. People are drawn to quiet confidence because it is rare. It signals a person who has conquered their own ego, and there is nothing more powerful than that. You don't need to tell people how good you are. You don't need to tell them how hard you work. You don't need to tell them why you're right. Let your preparation make the noise. Chapter summary. Loud confidence is a performance. Quiet confidence is a reality. Competence is the only true source of confidence. You cannot fake the dark hours of preparation. Silence is a position of strength. Speak with economy and lead with questions. Self-trust, keeping promises to yourself, is more important than social trust, praise from others. Stillness in body language communicates authority and internal peace. Let the results do the talking. An undeniable outcome is the best argument you will ever make. Chapter 9. Turn pressure into precision. The heat of the moment. We have all felt it. The tightening in the chest, the dry mouth, the sudden sharpening of the senses, and the intrusive thought that says, don't mess this up. Whether it is a championship game, a final interview for a dream job, or a high-stakes negotiation that could make or break your year, pressure is an unavoidable companion of a life lived with ambition. Most people view pressure as an enemy. They see it as a weight that threatens to crush their performance. They spend their energy trying to calm down or relax, effectively fighting against their own biology. But trying to relax when you are under extreme pressure is like trying to stop a waterfall with your bare hands. It is a waste of energy that only leads to more frustration. To act powerfully, you must stop trying to escape pressure and start learning to channel it. Pressure is nothing more than unrefined energy. It is your body's way of preparing you for a moment of significance. When you learn to reframe it, pressure becomes the catalyst for precision. Repetition phrase. Pressure reveals your training. The appraisal shift. Threat versus challenge. In the field of sports psychology, researchers have found a profound difference in how elite athletes and amateurs perceive the physical sensations of stress. An amateur feels their heart racing and interprets it as anxiety. They tell themselves, "I'm nervous, I'm shaking, something is wrong." This is a threat appraisal. When the brain perceives a threat, blood vessels constrict, oxygen flow to the brain decreases, and fine motor skills deteriorate. You choke. An elite performer feels the exact same heart rate spike and interprets it as readiness. They tell themselves, "My body is fueling up. My heart is pumping oxygen to my muscles. My senses are sharpening. I am ready." This is a challenge appraisal. In this state, blood vessels remain dilated, the brain stays oxygenated, and the adrenaline acts as a cognitive enhancer. The physical sensation is identical. The only difference is the label you give it. To turn pressure into precision, your first move is a mental reframe. I am not nervous, I am prepared. Adrenaline, the tool of the master. Adrenaline is often misunderstood as a panic chemical. In reality, adrenaline is a performance-enhancing drug that your body produces for free. It narrows your visual field, tunnel vision, increases your reaction time, and numbs pain. In a state of chaos, tunnel vision is usually seen as a negative. But in a state of precision, tunnel vision is a superpower. It allows you to ignore the distractions, the crowd, and the noise, and focus entirely on the high-leverage task. The secret to using adrenaline is simplification. Under high pressure, the brain cannot handle complex, multi-step instructions. If you try to remember a 20-point checklist while your heart is pounding at 150 beats per minute, you will fail. Precision comes from reducing the complex to the simple. A quarterback doesn't think about the entire playbook. He thinks about the one receiver's route. A surgeon doesn't think about the entire 6-hour operation. They focus on the one incision they are making now. A negotiator doesn't think about the whole contract. They focus on the one word the opponent just used. The slow is smooth principle. There is a famous adage used by Navy SEALs and special operations teams: slow is smooth and smooth is fast. When pressure hits, our natural instinct is to speed up. We talk faster, move faster, and make decisions faster. We feel a frantic need to get it over with. But speed without smoothness is just haste, and haste leads to catastrophic errors. To turn pressure into precision, you must manually force yourself to move at 80% of your normal speed. Take an extra second to breathe before answering a question. Move your hands with deliberate, measured grace. Speak with a lower, slower cadence. When you move smoothly, you avoid the jerky movements that cause mistakes. By going slow, you allow your brain to process the data accurately. Ironically, the person who moves with smooth slowness under pressure ends up finishing the task faster and more effectively than the person who tried to rush. Tactical breathing and sensory grounding. While you shouldn't try to relax, you must keep your physiological arousal within a functional range. If your heart rate goes too high, typically above 175 BPM, you lose all cognitive function. This is condition red, where you become a purely reactive animal. To stay in the precision zone, use controlled breathing. We have discussed the pause, breathe, choose method, but under extreme pressure, you need the exhale extension. Your inhale is linked to your sympathetic nervous system, the accelerator, and your exhale is linked to your parasympathetic nervous system, the brake. By making your exhale twice as long as your inhale, e.g., breathe in for 3, out for 6, you tap the brakes on your heart rate without losing the edge of your adrenaline. If you feel your mind starting to spin, use the 5-4-3-2-1 sensory grounding technique to return to the present. Acknowledge 5 things you see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste, or 1 deep breath. This forces your brain to re-engage with the physical world, stripping away the imaginary pressure of the future. Pressure reveals your training. There is a myth that people rise to the occasion in a crisis. The reality is that no one rises to the occasion. You sink to the level of your training. Pressure is a spotlight. It doesn't add anything to your skill set. It only reveals what is already there. If you haven't practiced your speech, pressure will reveal your lack of preparation. If you haven't mastered your emotions, pressure will reveal your instability. This is why Act Powerfully is the final part of our book's title. Powerful action is the result of overlearning. You must practice your craft in low-pressure environments until the movements or the knowledge become subcortical, meaning you can do them without thinking. When a master is under pressure, they don't have to think about what to do. Their body and their fast brain already know the answer. Because they have trained the basics to the point of boredom, they have the mental bandwidth left over to handle the unexpected variables of the crisis. Case study: the miracle in the cockpit. Consider the case of a commercial pilot facing a sudden engine failure at 30,000 feet. The cockpit is a symphony of alarms. The plane is lurching. The co-pilot is shouting. The pressure is immense. An untrained person would freeze or pull the controls frantically. But the pilot has spent hundreds of hours in a simulator practicing this exact scenario. He doesn't feel calm in the traditional sense. His heart is racing. But he turns that pressure into narrowed attention. He ignores 90% of the alarms and focuses on the primary flight display. He goes through his emergency checklist with smooth slowness. He simplifies the problem: keep the nose level, restart the engine, communicate. He didn't rise to a miracle. He simply sank to the level of his simulator training. The pressure provided the adrenaline he needed to stay awake and focused for the next 20 minutes of intense labor. The narrowing technique. When you are under pressure, the world feels big and loud. To regain precision, you must narrow the frame. If you are giving a speech to 500 people, don't look at the crowd. Look at the 3 inches of space between the eyes of one person. If you are in a high-stakes meeting, don't think about the millions of dollars on the line. Focus on the specific data point on the slide in front of you. By shrinking the area of responsibility, you make the task manageable. You are telling your brain, I don't need to solve the whole world. I just need to solve this 1-inch square of reality. Practical exercise. Pressure drills. You can inoculate yourself against pressure by practicing in controlled environments. The time crunch drill. Take a task you do regularly, like writing a report or cleaning. Set a timer for 50% of the time it usually takes. Feel the rush of pressure. Practice staying smooth and slow in your movements even as the clock ticks down. The audience drill. If you have to present something, practice it in front of people who make you slightly uncomfortable, not your supportive friends, but a critical colleague or a stranger. Lean into the discomfort. Practice your challenge appraisal. The inhale-exhale reset. 3 times today. Intentionally spike your heart rate, run up the stairs or do jumping jacks. Then, immediately sit down and use the exhale extension, 3 seconds in, 6 seconds out, to bring your heart rate back down while maintaining focus on a complex mental task like math or writing. Turn pressure into precision. Pressure is the price of entry for a meaningful life. If you have no pressure, it means you aren't doing anything that matters. Instead of praying for a life without pressure, pray for the discipline to handle it. See the shaking in your hands as a sign of power, not weakness. See the tunnel vision as a tool for focus, not a limitation. When the moment comes and the world is watching, do not try to be perfect. Just be precise. Follow your training. Move smoothly. Breathe out. Repetition phrase. Pressure reveals your training. Chapter summary. Reframe pressure as readiness. Use challenge appraisal to turn anxiety into fuel. Adrenaline is a tool for focus. Use it to tunnel into the most important task. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Deliberately slow down your movements to avoid haste-based errors. Simplify the mission. Under pressure, the brain only handles simple, singular goals. Exhale to stabilize. Use long exhales to keep your heart rate in the precision zone. Trust your training. You don't rise to the occasion. You fall back on your preparation. Chapter 10. Act powerfully, then let go. The paralysis of the after echo. We have spent this journey learning how to silence the noise, master our biology, and sharpen our decisions. But there is one final hurdle that even the most disciplined thinkers often trip over: the after echo. The after echo is the mental noise that occurs after the action has been taken. It is the second guessing, the should have said, and the obsessive checking of results. It is the tendency to make a bold move and then immediately dilute its power by worrying about how it was received. Most people expend 20% of their energy on the action itself and 80% on the emotional fallout of that action. They make a decision and then spend the next 3 nights lying awake, replaying the scene, looking for signs of failure. This post-decision rumination is a leak in your power. It drains the energy you need for your next move. To act powerfully is to act with total finality. It means that once the arrow has left the bow, you stop trying to influence its flight. You turn your back on the target and reach for the next arrow. Final principle: commit fully, release completely. The definition of power. In the context of this book, power is not about dominance or aggression. True power is congruence. It is the state where your thoughts, your words, and your actions are all moving in the same direction at the same time. When you act powerfully, you act without internal friction. You are not half-heartedly trying something while looking for an exit strategy. You are not testing the waters. You are the water. A powerful action is one taken with wholehearted commitment. This doesn't mean you are certain of the outcome. No one can be certain of the outcome. It means you are certain of your intent. You have run the decision through your filters, you have consulted the silence, you have disciplined your inner dialogue, and now you are executing with 100% of your available resources. The art of the clean break. The secret to sustained high performance is the ability to make a clean break between the execution and the evaluation. In the world of professional golf, players have a rule called the 10-yard rule. After a player hits a shot, whether it was a beautiful drive or a disastrous slice into the woods, they are allowed to be angry, frustrated, or happy for exactly 10 yards of walking. Once they cross that 10-yard mark, the shot is dead. It no longer exists. If they carry the frustration of the last shot into the next one, they will tighten up and fail again. You must implement a 10-yard rule in your life. If you send a high-stakes proposal, the moment you hit send, the proposal is dead. If you have a difficult conversation with a partner, the moment you leave the room, the conversation is over. If you make a bold investment, the moment the trade is executed, the decision is finished. By releasing the action, you preserve your emotional capital. You refuse to let the past, even a past that happened 5 seconds ago, contaminate the present. Outcome independence. The Stoic archer. The ancient Stoic philosophers used the metaphor of the archer to explain this concept. The archer does everything in his power to hit the target. He chooses the best bow, he feathers his arrows perfectly, he trains his muscles, and he accounts for the wind. This is the act powerfully phase. But once the arrow leaves the string, the archer realizes that the hit is no longer up to him. A sudden gust of wind could blow it off course. The target could move. A bird could fly in the way. The Stoic archer finds his win in the quality of the shot, not the accuracy of the hit. If he did everything correctly, he has succeeded, regardless of whether the arrow finds the bullseye. When you are outcome dependent, you are fragile. If the world doesn't give you the result you wanted, your confidence shatters. But when you are outcome independent, you are invincible. You act with power because you know that your value is tied to your process, not the world's reaction. Releasing the need for validation. Why do we find it so hard to let go? Because we are addicted to validation. We want to know that we were right. We want to know that people liked us. We want to know that our move was smart. Seeking validation is a form of quiet reaction. It means you are still at the mercy of the external world. To act powerfully, you must become your own court of last resort. You must reach a point where your own approval of your process is more important than the world's approval of your results. If you know you stayed calm, thought clearly, and acted with precision, then the outcome is simply data. It is not a judgment on your soul. The post-mortem versus rumination. Letting go does not mean you don't learn from your mistakes. It means you separate analysis from emotion. Rumination is an emotional loop. It sounds like, I can't believe I said that. I'm so stupid. Everyone must hate me. Why does this always happen? It is vague, loud, and destructive. The postmortem is a clinical analysis. It happens at a scheduled time, not in the middle of the night. It sounds like, the pitch failed because I didn't address the pricing objection early enough. Next time, I will move that slide to the beginning. The data is clear. Moving on. Once the postmortem is finished, the file is closed and burned. You do not revisit it unless you are looking for a specific data point. You have extracted the gold of the lesson and discarded the slag of the regret. Case study: the release of a great leader. Consider a CEO, Thomas, who had to make the incredibly difficult decision to shut down a division of his company, resulting in 200 layoffs. He spent weeks in the think clearly phase. He analyzed the facts, consulted the silence, and looked at the long-term consequences for the remaining 1,000 employees. When the day came to announce the decision, he acted powerfully. He didn't hide behind a memo. He stood in front of the employees, looked them in the eye, and delivered the news with empathy but without hesitation. He took ownership of the decision. He didn't apologize for the strategy, but he acknowledged the human cost. The moment the meeting was over, Thomas went back to his office and began working on the next move, the restructuring of the remaining divisions. His assistants were surprised. They expected him to be distraught, to pace the floor, or to spend the day explaining himself to the board. One asked him, "How are you so calm right now?" Thomas replied, "The decision was made weeks ago. The execution happened an hour ago. To dwell on it now doesn't help the people who are leaving, and it certainly doesn't help the people who are staying. I did my best. Now I must be at my best for what comes next." Thomas had mastered the release. Because he didn't entangle himself in the guilt of the past, he was able to lead his company into a successful future. The final principle: commit fully, release completely. As we reach the end of this book, these 4 words are what I want you to carry into the world. Commit fully. Don't live a lukewarm life. Don't be a person who half tries, half decides, and half acts. When you decide to move, move with the weight of your entire being. Whether it's a workout, a conversation, a career change, or a moment of rest, be all there. Eliminate the internal maybe. Release completely. The moment the action is done, give it back to the universe. You are not the owner of the results. You are the author of the actions. If the world rewards you, accept it with a quiet confidence. If the world rejects you, accept it with a detached calm. By releasing, you stay light. You remain the non-anxious presence. You keep your eyes clear so you can see the next opportunity that the emotional people are going to miss. Practical exercise. The sunset rule. To practice the art of letting go, implement the sunset rule. The done list. At the end of every day, write down 3 things you did powerfully. Not things you did perfectly, but things you did with commitment. The handoff. For each item, visualize yourself placing it in a box and closing the lid. Say to yourself, the action is complete. The outcome is no longer my responsibility. The mental horizon. Once the sun goes down, you are no longer allowed to work on today's problems. You are in the restroom. If a thought about a past action comes up, label it. That is an after echo. It has no power here. Final word. The power of the calm mind. You now possess the roadmap to a different kind of life. You know how to stop reacting by finding the 5-second gap. You know that calm is your greatest competitive advantage. You know that clarity is born in silence. You know how to discipline your inner dialogue to reflect precision rather than fear. You know how to control the moment and ignore the mountain. You know how to detach from chaos and remain unhooked. You know how to think in decisions, bypassing the volatility of your moods. You know how to move with quiet confidence, letting your results speak for you. You know how to turn pressure into precision through training and simplification. And finally, you know how to act powerfully and then have the courage to let go. The world will continue to be loud. It will continue to be chaotic. It will continue to throw hooks and shouting and crises your way. But you are no longer a pinball being tossed around by the hits. You are the one who pauses. You are the one who breathes. You are the one who chooses. Go forth. Stay calm. Think clearly. Act powerfully. And then, let go. Summary of core phrases to remember. Chapter 1. Pause. Breathe. Choose. Chapter 2. Calm people see what emotional people miss. Chapter 3. Silence is where strategy is born. Chapter 4. Your mind obeys the words you repeat. Chapter 5. Win this moment. The rest follows. Chapter 6. You perform better when you're not entangled. Chapter 7. Feelings pass. Decisions compound. Chapter 8. Let your preparation make the noise. Chapter 9. Pressure reveals your training. Chapter 10. Commit fully. Release completely.